that both in letter and spirit of the law of the land, today Jammu and Kashmir is truly an integral part of India. It is as integral to India as any other state in this country. Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Manipur, Arunachal Pradesh, all the laws of the land which are applicable in any state of this country will now be applicable in Jammu and Kashmir as well. And more importantly, the fig leaf that was offered through autonomy or special status, or because 370 happened to be on the statutory books, that fig leaf which allowed Pakistan or even China for that matter to meddle in Kashmir, that fig leaf does not exist anymore. There is no more a legal basis for any third party to claim a dispute or a disputed status in Jammu and Kashmir. And most importantly, as the court observed in its order yesterday, there is no concept of asymmetric federalism. Federalism is federalism. It is as much true for Tamil Nadu, for Madhya Pradesh, for Bengal as it should be for Jammu and Kashmir. We'll get to all of that and more in just a second, but first, the story of the day.
Clauses A, B and C of Article
जम्मू कश्मीर के एसटी भाइयों के अधिकारों को कौन रोक कर, ये 3 परिवार रोक कर बैठे थे मान्यवर, जो 370 को एंजॉय कर 75 साल तक उनका अधिकार जो भारत के संविधान ने दिया था, कौन रोक कर बैठा था उसको?
आज ये जवाब नहीं था, गालियों की बौछार थी जो इस दुनिया में नहीं है उनको भी दी गई।
जम्मू कश्मीर जहन्नम है।
All right, let me explain this in greater detail, that all the laws as applicable in any part of India will be applicable in Jammu and Kashmir as well. What are the laws that were prevented because of 370 and because of special status from being implemented in Kashmir, which now the ambit of the laws will be applicable to Kashmir as well? The Indian Penal Code will now apply. Earlier, it used to be the Ranbir Penal Code, which was separate for Jammu and Kashmir because of its special status. Now, all provisions of the Indian Penal Code will apply in Jammu and Kashmir. The Juvenile Justice Act, the Care and Protection Act, now applies to the state of to the territory of Jammu and Kashmir. The Prevention of Corruption Act, this is applicable for all elected representatives who are caught in acts of corruption in any part of India. In Kashmir, it was not applicable. From now on, this law will apply just the same in Kashmir. The right to education, remember, for all children up to the age of 14, education is a fundamental right, and the guarantee of that has to be given by the state. That now applies to the students of Jammu and Kashmir as well. Whistleblowers Protection Act, particularly when there are people who are bringing to the public domain evidence about alleged malpractices or corrupt practices by elected representatives, they were protected by the Whistleblowers Protection Act. That will now apply in Jammu and Kashmir as well. Very importantly, the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act, and this is a hugely important act because remember, if any SC or ST complains that abusive language has been used against them, then stringent provisions of the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act would apply in such cases in all of India. That now applies in the case of Jammu and Kashmir as well. The National Commission for Safai Karmacharis Act, that applies in Jammu and Kashmir as well. The National Commission for Minorities Act will now apply in Jammu and Kashmir. The Right to Information Act, which means any public official, any public department which is asked for information, they will have no recourse other than if it's part of official secrets, other than to share it with the applicant who has requested for it. And today, the Parliament of India took up a 33% women's reservation in the state legislature for Jammu and Kashmir. That will be applicable as well as soon as that is passed in both houses of Parliament. Meanwhile, reservations, and this is a very, very critical thing. We all know what an important topic reservation is across all of the states of India. There are states that have even gone beyond the cap of 50% posed by the Supreme Court judgment in the Indira Sani case. But reservations have also now got a major boost as far as vulnerable sections of Jammu and Kashmir are concerned. 7 seats have been reserved as per the Reorganization Act. 7 seats have been reserved for members of the scheduled castes. 9 seats have been reserved for members of the scheduled tribes. Earlier, Jammu and Kashmir, even when it had a state legislature, it did not have separate reservation for SCs and STs. 24 seats have been left vacant till Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, the occupation of that territory ceases, and those territories are brought back and their accession happens back to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Now, the opposition has criticized that, saying that this is empty rhetoric, that the government of India cannot change the reality on the ground, and that there is a POK and there is a Jammu and Kashmir. Also, the Lieutenant Governor can nominate 2 Kashmiri migrants to the assembly. One of those nominated Kashmiri migrants has to be a woman. So, all of these reservations, which, like I said, are applicable in all of the other states of India, which were not applicable in Jammu and Kashmir, will now be applicable in this state as well, in this territory as well. But some of the Valley parties, yesterday you heard from both Omar Abdullah and Mehbooba Mufti, today hear from the NC patron and multiple-term Chief Minister Dr. Farooq Abdullah, who's now a Member of Parliament. He spoke to reporters outside Parliament and he continued to fume at not just the verdict, but I think the reluctance to accept yesterday's verdict is now morphing into criticism or even abuse downright of the people of the state itself. Listen into what Dr. Farooq Abdullah had to say outside Parliament today.
जम्मू कश्मीर जहन्नम में जाए और क्या करें? जम्मू कश्मीर तो ले गए वहीं ले गए आप लोग, क्यों कर दिया? लोगों के दिल जीतने हैं, कैसे जीतोगे लोगों के दिल? जब ऐसे वैसे चीजें करो जिससे लोग आपसे और भी दूर जाए.
So J&K can go to hell is what Dr. Farooq Abdullah said today. Now, the BJP has, of course, made a big issue out of this. Shehzad Poonawalla has tweeted, and this is part of our Motorola India's best 5G smartphone brands tweet of the day.
Hello, Moto.
All right, so this is what BJP spokesperson Shehzad Poonawalla has tweeted. That Jammu and Kashmir can go to hell, says Dr. Farooq Abdullah. After DMK demanding self-determination, now Farooq says this merely because the Supreme Court upheld the legal validity of 370, which has ended the politics of Parivarbaad and Patharbazi and Pakistan Parasti. This is the India Alliance's true face. They want 370 back and they don't care about Jammu and Kashmir at all, or else the India Alliance must condemn this statement. So let's get to our big debate with legal uniformity, whether it is reservations or various sections of the Indian Penal Code. Has Jammu and Kashmir taken another big, giant leap towards being mainstreamed like any other state or union territory of India?
Hello, Moto.
So joining us on the debate topic tonight, Sanju Verma is national spokesperson of the BJP. Mr. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, national spokesperson of the Congress Party, is joining us. We also have SP Waid, former DGP of Jammu and Kashmir. Muzaffar Iqbal Khan is a former judge and a senior leader of the National Conference. Salman Nizami is chief spokesperson of the DPAP. Sanju Verma, you know, I just outlined the various laws of the Indian Penal Code, the various reservation provisions for SCs, STs, etc. And now, of course, women's reservation will also be applicable when the bill passes in both houses of parliament. All of this was not possible till 370 remained on the statutory books. It now ceases to exist and it's got a legal stamp of approval after the verdict yesterday by the Supreme Court. So all of these laws will now be applicable to Jammu and Kashmir just like it would to any other state or territory of India. Do you think that this has taken one more step towards the mainstreaming of Jammu and Kashmir?
You know, Zaka, first and foremost, I have to thank you for that absolutely brilliant and comprehensive introduction. There were facts which even I was not aware of, though I do a lot of homework before coming on your show. Will it lead to mainstreaming? I think that process began right after the abrogation of Article 370 way back in August 2019. And I say that backed by statistics and data. We are all aware that prior to the abrogation, you know, a marginalized section of the society, say the Valmikis, for example, they had no representation. And they could not even afford to have representation within the J&K assembly. Now that has changed. If you look at what happened to the Gujjars and Bakarwals, way back in 1991-92, they were given ST status. But post the abrogation of Article 370, now Pahadis also have been given ST status. So I think the abrogation made things easier. But more importantly, I think, if you look at terror incidents, those are down by 67% plus. Stone pelting incidents are down by 87% plus. And while there continue to be lone wolf incidents, those will take a time take a while, to get sorted. I think the best way to mainstream a war-ravaged or a conflict-ridden zone is to ensure that people are empowered economically. And I think there the Modi government has done an outstanding job, a brilliant job, because don't forget, as we speak now, the 81,000 crore package which was announced by Prime Minister Modi way back in 2015, more than 83% of that has already been spent. Then there was a 28,000 crore GST linked package which was announced 18 months back. That is also underway. The Chenani Nashri tunnel, the work on that started in 2011. It was completed in 2017 by Prime Minister Modi. As we speak now, 25,000 crore worth of infrastructure projects are underway. Most importantly, in the last 12 months, 1.5 crore tourists have come to J&K, which is superb, given that J&K is by and large a tourist-driven economy. More than 12 lakh Ujjwala Yojana connections have been given to the women in J&K households. More than 9 lakh children benefit from the midday meal school scheme in J&K. Ayushman Bharat is applicable to only those who qualify under the list of socially and economically backward castes in other states. But in Jammu and Kashmir, no questions asked. Anybody, right from Farooq Abdullah, you could be a millionaire, a billionaire, or somebody who's surviving on food stamps. You will be, having complete access to Ayushman Bharat Yojana. And most importantly, I think there is now better utilization of resources. For the longest time when the Abdullahs were in power in the state and the Congress was in power in the center, I'll just take 10 seconds. The average money that was received by way of grants, every Kashmiri used to get 93,000 rupees. Jammu and Kashmir had less than 2% of India's population, but used to get more than 10% of the central government grants, which were never utilized. Uttar Pradesh, despite 13.5% of India's population, used to get only 8% of the grants, which means an average person in Uttar Pradesh used to get only 4,300 rupees per person. And despite getting 93,000 rupees per person on an average, none of that money went to the end user because there was pilferage. And that, I think, has stopped because the leadership after abrogation of Article 370 is very clear. We mean business and we will not allow anyone to play foul with what we intend to do.
Let me go to Mohan Kumar Mangalam. Mohan Kumar Mangalam, I'm just repeating for the benefit of our viewers who may have just joined. These are the laws that are now applicable in Jammu and Kashmir, just like they are applicable in any state of India. Juvenile Justice Act, the Prevention of Corruption Act, the Right to Education, which is a central law passed by Parliament, Whistleblowers Protection Act, the SC/ST Prevention of Atrocities Act. Please give me a good reason why none of these laws, which were applicable in all provinces, states, territories of India, were not applicable in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It was all because of this fig leaf of Article 370, which created this whole thing that, Jammu and Kashmir is a special status, therefore the laws of India will not apply to that state until ratified by the state legislature.
Zaka, you mentioned a few laws. You also talked about reservation, and in the same breath forgot to mention that Jammu and Kashmir had reservation before the abrogation of 370 as well. So to educate your viewers, let me tell them that before the special status of Jammu and Kashmir was removed, there was an 8% reservation for scheduled castes, 10% for scheduled tribes, 2% for social castes, and so on and so forth. So you made it sound like there was no reservation in the state before this. And as you mentioned a whole number of laws, I can equally larger number of laws that are actually applicable in Jammu and Kashmir. As the Honorable Chief Justice of India read out the summary of this judgment, he pointed out to the fact that over the last 70 years, step by step, the original Article 370 that was promulgated in or made part of our constitution has been gradually made ineffective. It was barely a weak link between Jammu and Kashmir and the center. Now, what we have been opposed to from the very beginning is the manner in which 370 was abrogated. Now, unfortunately, the learned judges did not decide on some of the most important questions actually that were facing them, which includes whether the governor in his powers in June 2018 had rightfully, had right cause or just cause to dissolve the assembly.
That was not the matter that was under challenge anyway, Mohan. But anyway, be that as it may, go
hold
on.
on a second.
The matter before the Constitution bench was not whether the dissolution of the assembly was valid.
1 second. It is all part of the same
No, it was not
process.
part of this, the matter before the court. Anyway, go on, yeah.
If you did not have president's rule, you wouldn't have to go and modify Article 376 and then have the president actually give his assent in the absence of a legislative assembly. So if there was no president's rule, 370 could not be abrogated at all. That is, I'm talking prior to the judgment.
No, 1 second. You haven't answered my question, and I'm coming back. I've just been informed. 1 second. I've just been informed by my producers, Ms. Mohan Kumar Manglam, that Valmikis as OBCs did not have even permanent resident status in Jammu and Kashmir. Secondly, and you are well aware of this. Hang on a second. Hang on a second. No, 1 second. Hang on a second. You're well aware of this, that if Kashmiri women married from outside, they had no access to property rights because of 35A. Now, after the abrogation of 370 and its legal validation by the Supreme Court, any resident of India, just like in any other part of India, is free to buy property, is free to live and work. Freedom of movement is a fundamental right.
Okay, Zaka. Now can I speak?
Yeah, so you're not answering any of those questions.
No, these aren't questions to answer. You're basically throwing facts at me, and I'm in agreement with you that, okay, these laws were not applicable. Here's the larger question. The larger question is 370 is just one part. After 370 came 371A, which is applicable to Nagaland, 371B, which is applicable to Mizoram. Asymmetric devolution of powers in states. There's more than one state in India where not all our laws are applicable, depending on how that state was acceded or is part of the union. This is also there in other countries, by the way. There's also asymmetric devolution of powers in Australia and in Russia. Now, we can go to every state, pick up certain laws that are applicable in the union and say, it would have been better if this was applicable in the state.
You know what?
Now, let me get to
Okay, Mohan, fine. There are three other guests. I need to go to them as well. But I think the court, because the court mentioned this, and I think it's pertinent to underline this as well, the court said that you cannot have, in a polity like India, in a federal system like ours, you cannot have an asymmetric federalism, which means that the federalism that Tamil Nadu has with the center, the same federalism should be applicable for Jammu and Kashmir with the center. But be that as it may, I want to come to SP Ved, and I want to deal with a second aspect, which I think is equally important. And that is, because 370 was on the statute books and because 370 gave this exalted, if not special status to Jammu and Kashmir, it was also used as a fig leaf, SP Vatsab, and correct me if I'm wrong, by the likes of Pakistan, by the likes of China, to say that, look, this territory is very different from any other territory of India. This territory's status is under dispute. The matter was before the United Nations. There are resolutions, and therefore it gave them an excuse. It gave them a fig leaf of keeping the pot boiling. Today, after the Supreme Court verdict, there is no ambiguity. Today, Jammu and Kashmir, like I said at the top of the show, in letter, spirit, and word of the law, is as much an integral part of this country as any other state or territory is. SP Vatsab.
Good evening, Zaka. The point you mentioned is absolutely correct. In fact, what we have seen, the breaking India forces, and particularly our two neighbors you mentioned, Pakistan and China, were actually using this handle to unleash a cycle of violence, and it had encouraged separatist sentiment, separatist forces within our state, as well as working at the behest of some of the neighboring countries. So there is absolutely no doubt that Article 370 was actually encouraging such forces, and that's why you saw in last 75 years how violence has wrecked the almost every home in Kashmir Valley and rest of Jammu region. And I think not that the removal of Article 370 will make Pakistan to stop
Yeah.
cross-border terrorism. In fact, I expect after yesterday's judgment, Pakistan will step up violence. But then the point it was exploiting in Kashmir Valley, that actually goes, and we will have to fight with Pakistan and China. That is a different matter. But this sentiment that you are different from rest of India, the sentiment that it breeded in Kashmir Valley, that oh, you have come from India, so that sentiment in a child coming up in Jammu and Kashmir,
Okay.
getting these feelings that we are little different from rest of India. Actually, it had discriminated not only with the citizens of India, like daughters of India couldn't own properties just because because this act was actually discriminatory to the women of J&K. It also discriminated against citizens of India. They could not have equal rights like any other part of the country, could not purchase property, settle, have their children. What to talk of rest of India? Even civil servants working in J&K, many of the IAS, IPS officers could not have their children employed in J&K, could not have their houses after spending 35 years going back to rest of India with nowhere to go. So,
I think that's a fair point. I mean, if you have a civil servant and if that person's family can't be allowed to settle in Jammu and Kashmir, then I don't know what discriminatory laws we're talking about. But Muzaffar Iqbal Khan, you know, I don't want to play it out again, but we can show these as pictures. This is the senior most leader of your party, the NC patron, Dr. Farooq Abdullah, taking out his anger, not just against the Supreme Court judgment yesterday, but when he says Jammu and Kashmir can go to hell, that is an insult to the people of the state. You can have whatever reservations you have on a court judgment, whatever political differences you have with the BJP or any other party, but to say that J&K can go to hell is Farooq Saab letting his frustrations out on the people of the state.
Zaka, I will reply to that query later. But let me correct you first and all those panelists and your viewers that you have said that Indian Penal Code was not applicable. Mr. Vaid is sitting here. He remained the Director General of the state at a very sensitive time also. He has a right to say, and I uphold his right to say, but I disagree respectfully with him, whatever he has said. The Ranveer Penal Code was pari materia, the Indian Penal Code, without any variation except the name, which was even prior to 1947. Ranveer Penal Code was not given by Article 370. Secondly, the protection of the land and employment was not given by Article 370. Let me correct you. Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir in 1927 gave this protection to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And that protection was incorporated under Article 35A. Third thing you said, and I want to factually correct the viewers as well as the panelists, that there was no anti-corruption law applicable. Factually incorrect. Our Jammu and Kashmir Prevention of Corruption Act was more stringent than the today's central law. And I hope I'll be vindicated by Mr. Vaid also. Mr.
Iqbal Khan, can you also please tell me the conviction rate under the Prevention of Corruption Act that was applicable in Jammu and Kashmir? How many big name politicians were convicted under that law?
I hope it was as good as any other part of the country. If you will see the conviction rate all over the country, it was as good as any other part. Why are you laughing?
Mr. Khan, because I can name other politicians in different parts of India who've been convicted under
everywhere.
PCA, including
Our
big name
conviction
politicians.
rate
Lalu
was
Prasad
in-
Yadav, a former chief minister, multi-term chief minister, was convicted under the Prevention of Corruption Act. So I asked
many
you a
have you
simple
convicted in
question
last 3
as to
years?
what
Can I
was
ask you?
the conviction rate under the
Mr.
Corruption
Zaka,
Act that was applicable in Jammu and
Mr.
Kashmir.
Jacob, can
you
I
have no
ask
answer.
you?
No, you did not have an answer.
Can I ask you that how many people have you convicted after abrogation of Article 370 while applying the central anti-corruption law?
Because you said that all these laws were applicable, and again, one second. One second. The protection that you claim that the Maharaja gave in the 1920s to the people of Kashmir, that protection was validated, and that protection continued to exist for 75 years after independence because of 370 and 35A. Now, Jammu and Kashmir was not the only princely state in this country. Hyderabad was a princely state. Junagadh was a princely state. One second. None of the residents of those princely kingdoms. None of the residents of those princely kingdoms had all of these privileges that you're talking about.
More than these privileges.
And I go back to the judgment of the Supreme Court yesterday. Once a princely state becomes, once again, hear me out, Khan Sahab, you're a learned lawyer. So you have to take refuge in the judgment of the written word of the Supreme Court. Yesterday, in its order, it explicitly said the moment the instrument of accession was signed, then there is no concept of residual sovereignty. A state or a province or a princely kingdom which has then joined a union cannot have a concept of residual sovereignty. Tamil Nadu cannot have residual sovereignty. Just like Andhra Pradesh cannot have residual sovereignty. Residual sovereignty is with the Union of India. So if it's not applicable to Odisha or to Bengal, it will not be applicable to Jammu and Kashmir. It is there as part of the Supreme Court judgment yesterday. Please read.
Will you permit me to reply this?
Of course. Go ahead.
Will you keep on speaking and
go ahead. If you have a legal point to make, go ahead and make it.
The judgment did not say, the judgment nowhere say that there is no asymmetric relationship between union and the state. And asymmetric relationship has been recognized by the judgment even.
The judgment clearly yesterday said that the instrument of accession, thereby leading to Article 370, gave rise to asymmetric federalism. No other state of India has asymmetric federalism.
Exactly.
It's ultra vires to the constitution.
It is recognized by the judgment. Who says it is not recognized? It is recognized.
Oh my God, this man is
Sir,
making
please
sense.
read yesterday's judgment. I don't know why you are arguing on national television without reading yesterday's
Mr.
judgment.
Jacob, I have gone through it.
Anyway,
Asymmetric relationship.
Mr. Nizami, let me go to Mr. Nizami. He's been waiting patiently. Mr. Nizami, again, I come back to this central
You will
point.
not allow me to speak.
No, once again, I've spent more time with you than any other panelist, Mr. Khan. Let me now move on to the final panelist because he's been waiting very patiently. Mr. Nizami, point is that the people who benefited because of this asymmetric law, let's call it that, because no other article gave this to any other state of India. So please tell me, those people whose politics revolved around self-rule, whose politics revolved around autonomy, today they are feeling uncomfortable because the concept of autonomy does not arise. If there is no special status, if there is no 370, then what autonomy are you talking about?
Yes, I agree with you because they have been exposed also why they couldn't stand on their own slogans that we will give autonomy or self-rule. They have forgot it because they were the people who joined hands with the BJP. If you'll remember, it was Mehbooba Mufti who in her political rallies, they were promising self-rule, and then they joined hand with the party which actually was fighting for a revocation of Article 370, not from last 3-4 years, but since Advani's time or Vajpayee's
You're perfectly
time.
right in that. Yes, you're perfectly right in that. But today the
Yes.
situation is that none of these parties can, their central plank, whether it is self-rule of the PDP or autonomy of the National Conference, does not exist anymore. Because
That is why PDP, that Gupkar alliance, is not in existence anymore. They are fighting with each other because I recently saw Umar Abdullah's statement against Mehbooba Mufti that she is responsible for the killings in Kashmir. They are blaming each other. But if I will talk about 370, I will say that I don't see any change on the ground. People are still scared to purchase land in Kashmir. We witnessed a lot of terror attacks in Kashmir. Kashmiri Pandits were attacked. Mr. Bindru, who was a renowned businessman from Kashmir, he was killed last year. So after Article 370, we witnessed a lot of terror attacks, not only in Kashmir, but also in Jammu province.
Okay.
So the ground reality is different.
Okay. So Sanjay Verma, the ground reality may not have changed because of 370's abrogation. The terror attacks, absolute numbers may have come down, but the degree of it, the depravity of it is pretty much the same as we've seen what happened in Rajouri Poonch recently. Yeah.
Okay.
Sanjay Verma.
Zaka. Yeah, I did not heckle anyone. Thank you. Zaka, first and foremost, I will just take 20 seconds to say this, though you've said this. There is a narrative that is being peddled that the union government, Modi government in this case, has set a dangerous precedent by reducing the status of a state. The erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir has been reduced to being a union territory. So I will just tell people, go back and read the judgment of as recently as February 2023 given out by the two-judge bench led by Justice Sanjay Kaul, where Sanjay Kaul said that yes, while it is true that a large part of the powers are vested under the Election Commission, but under the Section 19(1)A and 19(1)B of the Delimitation Act of 2002, the central government has in exceptional circumstances sweeping and ample powers. The word used was sweeping and ample powers to reduce the status of a state into a union territory or what have you. So first and foremost, this issue was settled by Justice Sanjay Kaul in February 2023. You have already explained that the moment instrument of accession was signed by Jammu and Kashmir, it lost its element of standalone sovereignty, which was pointed out by Justice Chandrachud. But the more important point pointed out by Justice Chandrachud was this. He said when on 25th November 1949, the then Yuvraj Karan Singh signed a proclamation. That proclamation said that the Constitution of India supersedes over every other provision that may have been applicable to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. But last but not the least, people who said that how can Article 370 be abrogated by merely a presidential order, on that Justice Chandrachud said, while Article 1, 2 and 3 of the Constitution, the President has the powers to not take the state's permission and issue an order abrogating an article, in this case Article 370. So that also is an issue that is sorted. But on the ground, I will just take 10 seconds. Mr. Nizami, tell me, before January 2022, is it not true that it was even not kosher to unfurl and hoist the national tricolor? We hoisted the national tricolor in January 2022.
This is the propaganda by BJP. This is
after 30 years.
Listen, this is a clear propaganda.
Was banned. Hoisting the tricolor was banned. Watching movies in theaters
let Mr. Nizami respond. Okay, Mr. Nizami, quickly, and then I'll give Mohan the final word. I have to wrap up. Yes,
I am
Mr.
a proud
Nizami.
Indian. We used to raise the tricolor when we were in school.
Did
and
you
more
raise
than
the
20,000
tricolor at
Kashmiri
Lal Chowk in
Muslims.
Srinagar?
You can't
Did you raise the
ignore.
tricolor at Lal Chowk in Srinagar?
Let me speak while you are interrupting.
Don't lie because you're lying.
There was no media. That time
People
there was no
were
social
arrested
media.
for hoisting the national
We did not do
tricolor
any
at
such
Lal Chowk in
propaganda.
Srinagar.
You can't.
Zaka, you got to
Okay,
give me a
yeah,
word.
Mohan, I'll give you the final word on the question of downgrading the status of a state to a union territory. One judge, in a separate judgment, it was not a dissenting one, it was a concurring one, said there has to be cogent reasons and exceptional reasons for downgrading a state into a union territory. But more importantly, on the presidential proclamation, CO 273, the judgment is unanimous and it is clear that there is no demonstrable mala fide intent on the part of the president, and more importantly, no egregious misuse of power. When both of these criteria have been met, you cannot say that the presidential proclamation CO 273 was ultra vires of the Constitution. I think the judgment answers that.
Saka, I'm aware of the judgment and I respectfully disagree with it. There is a danger inherent in this judgment when they say that even with respect to Article 3, which deals with the division, the delimitation of states, the reconfiguration of states, that the assent of the Legislative Assembly is not required and it is merely recommendatory in nature. That in itself gives overpowering, usurping powers to the center, which I think it's not good for our federalism at all.
Okay.
One more point I'll make is that the father of our nation, Mahatma Gandhi, used to always say that the means are the most important. The manner in which you get to your destination matters.
Are you challenging the Supreme Court
verdict? Matters in... I said I disagree. I did not interrupt you, Sanjuji.
Okay, I am completely out of time. I'm completely out of time. Thank you very much to all our guests. I am completely out of time. Sorry about that. It's a slightly truncated debate tonight. But up next, on the other side of this very quick break, I'm going to catch up with strategic affairs expert Professor John Mearsheimer, the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas, and of course, that is 2 months old. There is also the almost 2-year conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Are we going to see extended conflicts in both of these theaters of war, or is a political solution on the anvil? We'll have that exclusive interview right after this quick break.
Hello, Moto.
Presented by
Lal Sharma, the new Chief Minister-elect for the state of Rajasthan. That's the word really coming in. That's the announcement breaking here first on CNN News 18 as we get to you all the details. A leader from the so-called upper caste, that's the community which is going to be occupying in a certain sense that's the community from which he's been chosen from. As my colleague Aman was also pointing out that there are various caste equations and arithmetics that need to be taken into account. Well, there the visuals on your screen. I believe he has the blessings of the top leadership of the party, including Mr. Rajnath Singh and Vasundhara Raje Scindia. The fact that his name was proposed by Vasundhara Raje Scindia is a show of strength. What do we know about him? Aman with us on the broadcast to give us a lowdown. Aman, the images on our screen. Bhajan Lal Sharma is going to be the next Chief Minister. Give us a sense, give us a brief history and background of the soon-to-be, sworn-in Chief Minister of Rajasthan.
Well, he is the first-time MLA now from Sanganer Assembly seat. This is a seat in Jaipur, one of the seats in Jaipur from where Bhajan Lal Sharma contested. This time, what I'm learning more is that he's also been a long-time person of the organization in the BJP in Rajasthan. He's been a Pradesh Mahasachiv for 4 times in the Bharatiya Janata Party. He is this time he's contested his election from Sanganer seat in Rajasthan, and I saw some leaders actually had gone to campaign for him, an upper caste leader. So BJP doing the perfect balancing, Anusha. Tribal in Chhattisgarh, OBC in Madhya Pradesh, and an upper caste leader in Rajasthan. So in a way, proposing an upper caste leader, a younger leader. Again, we see somebody who's in his between 50 and 60 being chosen as the new Chief Minister. In a way, BJP going for this next-gen leadership. And we saw Vasundhara Raje there announce his name as the Chief Minister. So in a way, Vasundhara Raje being brought on board before the decision was taken. It is not a woman, but it is Mr. Bhajan Lal, an upper caste leader, a first-time MLA who's been chosen as the Chief Minister of Rajasthan.
First-time leader, a Brahmin face from Rajasthan who's been chosen. That's the kind of choices that the BJP has made. Once again, putting that out for our viewers, you have the MLA from Sanganer, a first-time MLA who's been chosen as the next Chief Minister of Rajasthan, Bhajan Lal Sharma. He has the blessings of Vasundhara Raje Scindia. Let's try and listen in. I believe there's also a press conference that is scheduled to happen.
आप सभी विधायकों की तरफ से भैया लाल शर्मा को हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं। मैं आप सबको के नेतृत्व में राजस्थान के रास्ते पर तेजी के साथ बढ़ेगा, ऐसा मेरा पक्का विश्वास है। केवल भजनलाल शर्मा ही नहीं बल्कि पूरे सारे विधायक जो भी मंत्री बनेंगे, मंत्रिमंडल के सदस्य, सभी के सहयोग से ही यह काम संभव है। इस आज के अवसर पर पुनः आपको मैं अपनी शुभकामनाएं देता हूं और आप जहां भजनलाल जी शर्मा को मैं हार्दिक बधाई देता हूं, वहीं पर आप सबको भी मैं हार्दिक बधाई देते हुए आज के यदि अध्यक्ष जी की अनुमति हो तो आज की बैठक की कार्रवाई समाप्त की जाए। तो आज की बैठक की कार्रवाई समाप्त हुई। धन्यवाद।
That was a brief announcement by Mr. Rajnath Singh congratulating the new Chief Minister.
माननीय राजनाथ जी, माननीय मुख्यमंत्री प्रेस के लिए जाके मुख्यमंत्री दल के नेता वापस आएंगे, उसके बाद आप उनका स्वागत सत्कार कीजिए। अभी प्रेस के लिए जाने दो।
That's the announcement coming in from the BJP top brass. You had Mr. Rajnath Singh and others making that announcement. Bhajanlal Sharma, the next Chief Minister of Rajasthan, a first-time MLA. A very strong Brahmin face. Reports suggest that he is somebody who was in the race to become the next Chief Minister. From the Sanganer constituency of Jaipur, he has been elected as the first time as an MLA. He is also somebody who won by a record margin of about 48,000 votes. He is a strong Brahmin face, a local leader who is well known in the All right, we'll await if there's a reaction that comes from Mr. Bhajanlal Sharma, the Rajasthan Chief Minister-elect. We'll stay with those visuals. Meanwhile, I'll try and cut across to Aman and understand more about this choice. Aman, what does this choice reflect? What do we know?
Choice, I think, reflects a surprise. Anusha, the first somebody whose name has again not featured in any speculation so far. We just minutes before I heard that Bhajanlal Sharma could be one of the contenders. A word from one of the MLAs inside the meeting, and within minutes we had his name being announced. He's the first time MLA from Sanganer seat. This is a seat, urban seat in one of the Jaipur seats, in fact. And I had remember seeing his campaign once in Jaipur while I was there, and seen as an upper caste forward leader, a man which some people in the BJP are telling me from Rajasthan, a strong organizational man. He's been involved in this party organization in a big way. A ticket of a sitting MLA was cut to give Mr. Bhajanlal Sharma the ticket from this seat, which had also created some sort of mini revolt in the BJP that why this person has been chosen and a sitting MLA's ticket has been cut. But Mr. Bhajanlal Sharma won the seat with a very, very comfortable margin, and now we see him being appointed as the BJP legislative party leader, and he will be the Chief Minister. Vasundhara Raje announcing his name at this meeting today. She was handed over a chit by Mr. Rajnath Singh just before the meeting we saw. So in a way, BJP going in for this generational change that we had been speaking about earlier, choosing a younger leader. In a way, he is very much like Vishnu Deo Sai or Mohan Yadav in Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh respectively, a leader of almost the same age group, a leader in his 50s, seen as somebody who will be the next gen leadership of Rajasthan. BJP moving away from its big faces like Raman Singh, Shivraj Singh Chauhan and Vasundhara Raje, going for a next gen leadership. In a way, the Vajpayee era leaders, Anusha, be it Vasundhara Raje or be it Shivraj Singh Chauhan or Raman Singh, now fading a bit in the background, and we're seeing this new leadership of the BJP, which in fact Kailash Vijayvargiya yesterday I remember mentioning while speaking to us that this is the new India, and this is new India under Mr. Modi, in which the younger leaders need to come forward and take the leadership positions, Anusha.
Well, we are surprised. That's first thing. I agree with you, Aman. Now, Payal is also with us on the broadcast. Payal, what more details do you have about the new...
So it's been 2 months since the war between Israel and Hamas began. More than 1,200 Israelis were dead in the deadly October 7 terror attacks. And now, in the resultant Israeli operation, both on the ground and through the air, the Gazan Health Ministry claims that more than 18,000 Palestinians have died. What is the forward movement in this war? When is it likely to end? And what is Israel's endgame here? Will it be able to defeat Hamas, which is the stated objective? If Hamas is defeated, then what replaces it? And most importantly, will Israel accept a two-state solution, which only seems to be the only viable political solution to this crisis. Joining me now is somebody who's tracked this region and, in fact, global affairs for a long, long time now. He's the head of political sciences at the University of Chicago, Professor John Mearsheimer. Thank you very much, Professor Mearsheimer, for speaking with us. Always a pleasure to get your insights into some of the biggest stories in the world right now. And what bigger than the war between Israel and Hamas? It's been going on for 2 months now. There are casualties galore on both sides. It started off with the deadly terror attacks in which over 1,000 Israelis died, and now more than 15,000 Palestinians have died in the resultant attacks by Israel. Now, the question is, how long can this be sustained? When is this war likely to end? The stated military objective by Israel is the defeat of Hamas. Is that achievable? And if it is, then what comes in its place? Because something has got to take the place of Hamas. It cannot be a vacuum.
Well, it's very difficult to say how long the war will continue. When you watch all the horrors in Gaza, you say to yourself, this can't go on much longer. And hopefully that's true, but one cannot say for sure when it will end. The Israelis believe that they can punish the Palestinian population to a point where they will no longer resist the Israeli occupation. And at the same time, the Israelis are convinced that they can defeat Hamas on the ground. They can eliminate Hamas as a threat. I do not think this is possible. I do not think they can defeat Hamas. And even if I'm wrong and Hamas is defeated, another resistance group will pop up to replace it. And furthermore, the Palestinians are not going to submit to an occupation over time. It's just not going to work. There has to be some political solution. There's no military solution to this conflict. The Palestinians really need a state of their own, and absent a state of their own, this will just go on and on. So you ask me what will happen once the shooting starts, once the dust settles. And the answer is that there will be no Palestinian state. The Israelis will not let that happen. And the end result is this conflict will go on and on for the foreseeable future.
Now, one of the things that Israel has been floating is, once they clear out the Gaza Strip as much as is possible, to have some kind of a buffer zone between the Palestinian territories and Israel in a way that Israel can try and control or negate any potential future attack. One of the problems Israel was facing was these repeated rocket attacks from Gaza into mainland Israel. Is it even conceivable that they will be able to create some kind of a buffer zone between Gaza and Israel?
No, I think that the Israelis talk about controlling certain areas inside of Gaza and using those areas as a buffer to protect the Israeli areas that are adjacent to the Gaza Strip. But the problem is that the Israelis then end up occupying Gaza. And as we all know, the Israelis once occupied Gaza. They once had settlements in Gaza. But Ariel Sharon, when he was prime minister, withdrew those settlements and withdrew Israeli forces in 2005. Because there was too much resistance inside Gaza, and it made no sense from a cost-benefit point of view for the Israelis to try to hold Gaza. So to go back into Gaza now just recreates the problem that caused Israel to leave in 2005. It doesn't solve the problem. Again, this problem is not going to be solved until there's a political solution that satisfies the Palestinians. The Israelis are bent on creating a greater Israel. The Israeli government and the Israeli elites more generally want a greater Israel that includes the West Bank and Gaza Strip. But the problem that the Israelis face is that there are as many Palestinians inside of greater Israel as there are Jews. And when you have a situation like that, the Israelis have no choice but to suppress the Palestinians. And again, the Palestinians will not accept this and they will resist.
So why then, Professor, is the United States and the Biden administration seemingly giving a kind of blank check, if you will, to Israel, despite the fact, and this just last week at the UN Security Council, the United States was the only country that vetoed the proposal for an immediate ceasefire. Even in the General Assembly, when the vote is happening tonight, a majority of the countries of the world, over 100 of them, are asking for an immediate ceasefire. America seems to be this lone ranger amongst the big powers in the world that is completely and almost unequivocally supporting Israel. Why is that?
Well, the fact is that the United States is joined at the hip with Israel. These two countries have a remarkably close relationship. It's unprecedented in history. And the question is, why is that the case? And the answer is very simple. It's because pro-Israel forces, or what is commonly known as the Israel lobby here in the United States, is so powerful that it makes it almost impossible for any president to contest Israel on issues relating to the Palestinians. So we basically have a case here where no matter what the Israelis do to the Palestinians, the Americans will back them. And this is what you saw happen with regard to this Security Council resolution, where, as you say, the United States was the only country that was willing to back Israel's behavior in the Gaza Strip and not push for a ceasefire.
So has it also got to do with domestic politics, and particularly when a Democrat is in the White House? How difficult would it be for him to be seen as not supportive or supportive enough of Israel? Because the Republicans will make that into a big issue. Or is this an issue that is bipartisan in nature in the United States? Domestically, does domestic pressure explain why America is really giving this long rope to Israel?
Oh, I think domestic politics explains it almost completely. And this gets back to my point about the Israel lobby. The Israel lobby in action is domestic politics at play. Your question is, do we see even more emphasis on domestic politics in an upcoming election year? And I would argue no. I would argue that regardless of whether it's an election year or not, the United States government, whether it's Bill Clinton or Joe Biden or George Bush or Donald Trump, is going to support the Israelis down the line. It's just the way it works in American politics. And this is why you have this anomalous situation where every other country in the world is anxious to put an end to this war because it's so horrible. But the Americans are backing the Israelis completely.
So that brings me to my next question. There is already one war that's going on between Russia and Ukraine. Now you have a new war between Israel and Hamas, and America is pretty much funding both of these wars. Many are asking the question, can America handle, fund, support these two wars simultaneously? In fact, President Zelensky is in the United States this week. Just last week, the Republicans blocked an attempt for further funding Ukraine's war effort. There seems to be flailing interest in the Ukraine war, certainly on Capitol Hill amongst the Republican caucuses. Can America continue to support both Ukraine and Israel in the same fervor that it's been doing for some time now?
Well, I think the situation regarding Ukraine from the Biden administration's point of view is a disaster. I mean, independent of continued U.S. funding for the Zelensky government, the fact is that the Ukrainians are in desperate straits on the battlefield. The Russians are on the march. The Ukrainian army is in deep trouble. If you take that fact and you marry it to the fact that it looks like Biden is not going to be able to get any economic aid for Ukraine in the near future, this is a total disaster for Ukraine. It's hard to see how the Ukrainians can continue to fight on the battlefield in any meaningful way. And as things deteriorate in Ukraine, this will be terrible news for the Biden administration, because, as you noted, the Biden administration faces not just a conflict in Ukraine, where it's losing, but it also faces a conflict in Gaza, where there is no happy story to tell moving forward, where this terrible situation today looks like it continues on and on. So the Biden administration on the foreign policy front is in terrible shape from the perspective of the 2024 election.
So it's pretty apparent now that Ukraine is not winning this war. Russia clearly has the upper hand in this war. Russia right now controls about 20% of territory of Ukraine, which it did not have control over from when this war began. But now it is in control of. So the only realistic solution, and if there is, flailing interest in supporting the Ukrainian war effort in America by the biggest benefactor of Ukraine, then do you see the only realistic solution or realistic possibility for the end of this war for Ukraine to accept that its borders have changed, the 20% of territory it lost to Russia, it is perhaps lost for good, and that Ukraine gives some kind of a commitment that it's not going to join NATO explicitly? Do you think that's even going to happen?
Well, I think if Ukraine wants to end this war now, they have to accept the fact that Russia will keep the Crimea, and it will also keep the 4 oblasts that it now controls, and this includes the Donbass. At the same time, it's absolutely essential from a Russian perspective that Ukraine abandon its plans to join NATO and that Ukraine become a genuinely neutral state that has no security ties with the West. The problem here is that it's almost impossible to envision the Ukrainians giving up all that territory, accepting the fact that Russia has annexed Crimea and those 4 oblasts, and that's a fait accompli. And also it's hard to imagine Ukraine abandoning its plans to join NATO or giving up completely any meaningful security agreements with the West. But if Ukraine doesn't do that, then the Russians will not agree to end this war, because the Russians are on the march militarily, and they will take more territory if they can and do more to wreck Ukraine as a functioning state if they can. So I think there is a solution, which I just described, but from a Ukrainian point of view, that solution is unacceptable. And therefore, I think this war will go on.
I want to come back to domestic U.S. politics for just a second, because we've seen extreme criticism and we've seen protests and counter-protests as well on college campuses across the United States. You had just last week the presidents of some of the biggest universities, most elite universities in the U.S., Harvard, MIT, University of Pennsylvania, testify before Congress, and they couldn't answer, or at least give a simple answer to the question whether for a genocide of Jews would violate school rules. They're receiving a lot of flack for that. We're seeing a lot of openly anti-Semitic comments on campuses, sloganeering which is openly anti-Jews, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic. What would you attribute that to? And more importantly, what may this mean for the Biden administration? Because a lot of these young people, the Democratic Party and Mr. Biden's administration would want out on voting day in 2024, because a lot of these young voters could be leaning Democrat, and yet they are the ones who seem to have the most amount of problem with Biden's almost long rope, blank check, call it what you want, to Israel in this war effort.
Well, it's important to understand that the one place in the United States where criticism of Israel has been abundant are college campuses. That's the one place. And Israel's supporters in the United States have long paid serious attention to the question of how to shut down criticism of Israel on college campuses. And what's going on now is that the Israel lobby, and this is basically supporters of Israel, are telling this story that university and college campuses are hotbeds of anti-Semitism. I believe that nothing could be further from the truth. The idea that university and college campuses in the United States are filled with anti-Semites is not a serious argument. What you see on university and college campuses is lots of criticism of Israel. And we've gotten to the point in the United States where criticizing Israel is considered to be anti-Semitism. So when you see criticism of Israel and its behavior in Gaza on college campuses, Israel's supporters will say that's anti-Semitism. It is not anti-Semitism. We should be, and we are free on university and college campuses to criticize the United States, to criticize India, and to criticize Israel. And that's not anti-Semitism. Now, with regard to these 3 university presidents who testified before Congress and are being lambasted, they were asked a hypothetical question. They were asked if someone called for murdering Jews or genocide against Jews on a college campus, would that be acceptable free speech? So it's a hypothetical question. They were not saying that there is evidence of people making that argument on college campuses. Now, I think it's clear that those 3 university presidents did not answer the question wisely. They answered it in a ham-fisted way, and they have been severely criticized for it, and they have apologized. But that should be the end of the story. These 3 women are not anti-Semites, and they're not tolerating anti-Semitism on their campuses. What they tolerate is criticism of Israel, and criticism of Israel is unacceptable to Israel's supporters in the United States. And that's why they have their crosshairs on universities and colleges at this point in time.
And I do want to get a final word from you on what your thoughts are on India's stand when it comes to both of these wars, the Russia-Ukraine war, where again it took a slightly different position from the United States and other Western countries, and even on the Israel-Hamas war, while the Indian Prime Minister was one of the first world leaders to come out and unequivocally condemn the terrorist actions of Hamas. At the same time, India is also stuck to its long-stated position of a 2-state solution. So I'm curious to know your thoughts on how India has managed to sort of balance its position on both of these wars, Russia-Ukraine and Israel-Hamas.
Well, I think with regard to Ukraine, as I've said before on your show, I think the Indians are on the right side. I think they're behaving smartly. I think the Indians have understood from the beginning that it was foolish for Ukraine to get into a war with Russia. So I don't have much disagreement at all with India on the question of Ukraine. Gaza is a different matter. I think the fact is that the Modi government admires the Netanyahu government very much, and the Modi government has made it clear that it supports Israel in its war in Gaza. That's not to say that India doesn't want a ceasefire now, but by and large, the Indians have been supporting the Israelis, and that is in large part because Netanyahu and Modi have a great deal in common in terms of how they think about dealing with their body politics.
All right, Professor John Mearsheimer, it's always a pleasure speaking with you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us here on the News 18 network.
Co-presented by so yes, this news has just come out that Bhajanlal Sharma is the new Chief Minister of Rajasthan, and as soon as the news came out, the celebrations have started. In fact, the few workers who were collected over here have started clapping as soon as they heard the name of Bhajanlal Sharma. So yes, this name was actually one of the names that were
Hello, Namaskar. This is First Post and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Tonight, we start with the story of a country that is making most of the world decoupling from China, Vietnam. As companies de-risk businesses and countries diversify supply chains, they're turning to Vietnam. 2 months back, the US president was there. Today, the Chinese president is there. So what is it that makes Vietnam so attractive? We'll bring you the story. In West Asia, the Israel-Gaza war is spilling over. Yemen's Houthis are attacking ships in the Red Sea, posing a risk to global shipping. Is Israel using white phosphorus on civilians in Gaza and Lebanon? Has the COP28 ended in failure? It's not ended yet, but they've extended it. The summit was supposed to end today.